Peace, chiefs, and deers. It's Bronzebird here with another video. Before I begin, like and subscribe. Thank you. So, much to my excitement of seeing a BS organization such as BLM come under scrutiny for one of the founders being found out to be embezzling money into the condo business or real estate, it has come to my attention that even certain people are starting to wake up and smell a coffee of how much a BS of an organization of BLM is. Now, the thing about it is, to myself, that I was thinking that I foreshadowed in my own head that more than likely a lot of what we are already saying now and what we were saying for the last couple of years about the organization itself was going to come out into the playing field, such as so it was going to come out into the mainstream media. A lot of times before, a lot of people who was against BLM, they usually kept it under wraps, or, we talked around amongst each other. And it was a couple of people that came forward and said that BLM is a sham. BLM is a money embezzlement type of organization, taking money and all these donations and blah, blah, blah. And before then, it was a lot more, you would get more so excommunicated if you was a so-called Black person that dared to speak against BLM and what their mission was about. Now, the thing about it is, I'm glad to be seeing like something like this happen. Just to put out there in the atmosphere how much of a piece of shit BLM is. 3 women that is so-called lesbians, right, being backed up by someone on the upper echelon of society, as well as one of these so-called white boys that want to pose themselves as a so-called Black boy and talks about light skin privilege, as if he's the John B of BLM. And then what even adds more fuel to the fire is that you got an ex-convict, and then you have one of these women that's a single mom that is out here doing commercials for Cadillac and then trying to talk about the Black community when all the commercial is a bunch of so-called Black women and no so-called Black men in the commercial. I mean, you can't make this shit up. It's hilarious. And anybody who knows my stance since the inception of this channel, I've had the same view towards BLM since day one. I am a very huge critic of BLM. That's the reason I started to get sick and tired of these conversations about pro-Blackness. Because all it is about taking in neo-ideologies that has nothing to do with the mission state of what the so-called Black community should be. All it is mixing in liberalism and all these other talking points to make it seem as if this is what Black people themselves need to adhere to. Now, there's going to be a Fox clip that I'm going to be playing for you today, in which there's going to be a so-called Black man interviewing another so-called Black man who's going into the organization as Black Guns Matter. Now, the thing about it is, I definitely do think that Black people need to have a self-defense. They should be able to carry guns. They should be able to uphold the Second Amendment. They should be able to. I have no problem with that. Now, the thing about it is this. You're going to watch this clip, and I'm going to get my commentary on it. So, Pete. Fair use.
Prime time. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Lawrence Jones, and what a difference a year makes. Tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd. In the weeks and months that followed, American companies did their best to prove how woke and committed they were to promoting diversity and social justice. Corporations were promising money left and right after George Floyd's death.
Yeah, a lot of these companies now today, and even schools are trying to be more sensitive about the topic of conversations about race. Another brother that I was listening to, he gave his pinpoint on it about what it really means for America, quote unquote, to quote him. He's saying that it's moving into communism. That's what it is, a one step forward into moving into communism. But that's his word, not mine. Fox, what I feel like with Fox is, because they get a bad rep for years on end, CNN and the rest of them, now they trying to incorporate so-called Black people get into the conversation. That's why they have brothers like this on air sitting up there having these conversations about wokeness and pro-Blackness, and then inviting the gentleman you're going to see in a little bit talking about how you know, what's his stance on the black community, all these different things. I mean, it's a money scheme. You understand what I'm saying? Everything that you're viewing is a money scheme. This is all entertainment. Fox doesn't want to be revered as a racist organization. They don't want to be revered as a racist media company. So they would allow men like this to have a conversation on it and have him speak like a so-called black person, try to put up all these mannerisms to seem woke and cool and all this nonsense. This brother, when he speaks, it really started to irritate me when I watched this video because I just didn't understand why the brother needed to do all that, try to be all hip and all this other stuff like he was down with the people. And then you got these clown ass shows like Fox Soul that exist for these so-called black women to have a little powwow to sit up there and talk about bullshit as if they're around each other and they're gossiping. I don't understand it, but I'm gonna let the video play.
$50 billion, in fact, was pledged to advancing racial equity in this country. That's billion with a B. Some of it was supposed to be donated to civil rights organizations, invested in communities of color, or put toward reimagining hiring practices.
When they say, and this is another thing, I hate when people use that term, people of color. Mainly what they try to talk about is trying to give to so-called black people, the so-called black community. They use the term people of color in order to incorporate other races that would be viewed as the minority. Such as my mindset, the thing that I think is usually they try to incorporate so-called Hispanics, you know, usually Mexicans or people that come from South America and all these different things, and then immigrants that would be defined as minorities, okay?
At major corporations. And now a year later, how much do you think was actually spent? Take a minute and guess. 80%? How about 50? 25? What if I told you that only half of 1%, $250 million, was actually spent by these companies in support of Black lives?
Because a lot of these places, a lot of these organizations, or, you know, these people that talk about giving donations, all it is a scam. A lot of the times you give these money to these corporations, the one that talk about fight for AIDS or fight for black people and all these different things. It's a good gesture, but trust and believe they don't really do a lot with that money. It's for themselves. That's the whole point that a lot of people tend to forget. It's for themselves. It's not for actually helping. They usually don't help.
I bet you think their holier than thou pledges of generosity was a bunch of bull, that they were hollow virtue signals.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Ponzi scheme, in my opinion, but that's to each his own.
That black communities and organizations were never going to get the support they were promised.
They won't.
Well, you'd be exactly right. The one group that did manage to get a whole boatload of cash was Black Lives Matter. They pulled in more than $90 million last year, but only managed to spend a quarter of it on charitable causes.
That would be 22.5 million if I'm not mistaken. 22.5 million.
The group's been so shady with the money that Tamir's wife's mom begged the group to stop profiting off her son's death.
Because it's a bullshit organization.
That probably explains why, according to the New York Times, look at this, public support of Black Lives Matter has cratered since June 20. What a difference a year makes. Joining me now to discuss is Maj Toure, founder of Black Guns Matter. Maj, you always tell it like it is. So why is the support dropping?
The support is dropping because the people are following the money. A bunch of the money, Darren Seals told us before he was murdered, Black Lives Matter Incorporated is a sham organization designed specifically to fleece the black community, has nothing to do with improving the conditions of Black America, and they the ops, period.
Son said the ops, okay? I'm sorry that I keep pausing this video, but this is just to stretch out the idea. You're being confronted with two type of dimensions right now. Well, not two dimensions, but just two events taking place right now. And I try to speak from it in like a higher dimensional type of mindset. So number one, this could be caused as a way of chaos, where the red light is being put on so-called black people, so that men like this, a so-called black man, could be viewed as a quote-unquote COON. I won't say the word on here. Or he'll be defined as someone who's going with quote-unquote white supremacy, where a so-called black man is speaking his mind against an organization we all start to figure out is a BS organization. And later on, he's going to say something very, very important that a lot of people are starting to pick up on. And the fact of the matter that even their mission statement, which I told a lot of you brothers to read in a lot of my videos, where it's going to stretch out my points exactly. And the second thing is, we must not forget that this is Fox News, and their whole entire goal is to use the pro-black talking point and to get brothers that's conservative or get so-called black men such as the dude who's interviewing to have a conversation about opposing opposites or trying to understand the situation at hand. Because at the end of the day, this is a business. So what sells? Negativity sells. So at the end of the day, brothers like this is going to be put up on a screen, and then they'll try to have these liberal, I'm not gonna even say Uncle Tom, but like, you know, the brother that was from the Boondock show, the lawyer, we got his name, Tom, you know, from the show, that tries to speak like a so-called white person. Not to sit up there and say this brother is trying to speak like a so-called white person, but you know, the brothers that would be defined as an Oreo, where they'll try to have all these talking points of trying to appear very intelligent and astute, but try to still relate to so-called black people by using slang and any type of verbiage or words that try to appeal to so-called black people.
So Maj, so you got the organization, then you got the people that are on the street that have sincere calls for justice, but then you have the organization that got all the dough, making all these promises because they were pressured to do so. But when it came down to the nitty gritty, the community didn't see a lot of that dough. So the question is, will there be boycotts for these corporations, or will there be pressure to pay up? Because I want to see the dough.
Yeah, I don't want the boycott. The black community want the money. Y'all said that money was supposed to be for our community. You said it. You plastered the Black Lives Matter. Let me go back a second. Yes, we know that Black Lives Matter as a reality, obviously, right? And some people in America wanted to pretend like that wasn't the case. So I want to make that clear distinction between the people doing legitimate work, community work, and the incorporation that funneled. This was a money laundering scheme. If I, as Black Guns Matter, we raised and gave away over the last 4 years, we do work in firearm safety and suicide prevention and conflict resolution in black communities for the last 4 years. We've raised $410,000, give or take, and I've been very transparent with the money. Can you imagine if I'm at conservative tables, can you imagine how they would have crucified me if I only spent a quarter of that $400,000, a quarter, 25% of it on this stated purpose? No, it was a money laundering scheme, and a whole bunch of that money, don't want to get anybody in trouble, but yes, I do. A whole bunch of that money was funneled to the Democratic Party and Joe Biden and his team's whole scenario. That's where the money at.
Uh-oh. And that brother hit it right on the head. And I just want to say this really quickly. The problem is the conversation about pro-blackness is that you usually see a good amount of so-called black people who's all talk. They're not interested in actually doing the work. I mean, I find it funny that brothers like this will be crucified for actually wanting so-called black people to defend themselves. That if any money is spent, that he would be, exactly like he said, crucified for spending that money, even if his organization has good intentions. Anybody in a comment or anybody who's listening, please explain to me what has Black Lives Matter done to fix the conditions of so-called black people. Right now, in a lot of these so-called black neighborhoods, we're going through a process called gentrification, where so-called black people are losing their apartments and all these different things. But then the conversation about blackness comes into that as well. When you have a lot of degenerates that pollute the whole entire environment with their bullshit rhetoric. One of the videos I did explaining the fact of the matter that you have a lot of these dumbass niggas on dirt bikes sitting up there causing a whole entire nuisance to the neighborhood. So-called black men that sell drugs all day. So-called black men that don't want to do shit. Black people sit up there having pregnancy out of wedlock. And the fact of the matter is Black Lives Matter thinks it's honorable to have this conversation about white supremacy just because they sit up there and waste hundreds and hundreds of dollars on bullshit paint by sitting up there painting on well-known boulevards around the city and other places around in the country. And then talk about whiteness. The thing about it is too many times we come into this conversation about blackness in order to get the validation of white people. My thing about it is playing in the field of a so-called black man, you must understand your position in this society. That's why I'm not intimidated by so-called white people. I don't have to be racist towards so-called white people, but I am not intimidated by so-called white people. I have an understanding of where I sit on this land. Now, the thing about it is that these organizations do too much to try to make it seem like they're about something. And the thing about it is the sister that he's referring to, the one that's supposed to be in a relationship with a quote unquote trans man or whatever it is, I find it very ironic. They have to move into a so-called white neighborhood, a so-called white suburb, but then talk about white supremacy and how white people need to understand their privilege, but then at the same time married a so-called white trans man.
Follow the paper. That's why the plummet has happened amongst the black community. You see it.
So you got that aspect. Then you have the other aspect of them saying, look, we're going to hire more black folks in those communities. We're going to put more businesses there, do the work, you know, not just crops. We're going to put big business in these communities, and we're going to make sure that we're going to hire black people. That didn't happen either.
This from the same group of people that paid to destroy the businesses in them same communities. My community. They busted a gang of people that wasn't from there, incorporated, not the people that live there. We've seen scores of people over the last year stopping people from doing things in communities, saying, hey, you don't live here. We're here about a peaceful assembly. We're here about a peaceful protest. People getting bust in with a lot of money that came from somewhere to destroy those businesses in the first place. This is the...
And let me add into the point of that really quickly about the fact of the matter that they had Antifa and they had a lot of those so-called, I don't even want to just say it was so-called white people, but they was putting up ads in order for these actors to cause a big ruckus in these quote unquote protests. How funny it is that I find it that you have a lot of these like woke liberals that found it a pleasure to go ahead and scream and curse at cops, bash windows, destroy people's property and their businesses. And then you had I remember one day they had a so-called black woman speak against the fact of the matter that people were bashing her window and cracked her window open, splashed it, whatever you want to call it. And which she was like, you know, damn, this isn't right. I have a whole entire business and y'all destroyed it. I understand y'all need to get our message, but why do y'all have to destroy my business in the process? All it was a cause of chaos. And people got paid off of that. People got paid off of that. People went to jail because they're stupid. And I just want to make this also a point about how I've seen a lot of these Generation Z kids and millennials, right? More specifically, Generation Z, where they talk all that shit while they was protesting. Fuck the police. We don't like pigs. We don't like this. We don't like that. As soon as they get into situations and these cops rough arm them and then find out where they at and start arresting them, they start crying like whatever, man. They start crying. They start saying like, oh no, I didn't mean it. You know, I'm a good child. I didn't mean no harm. I was just out here protesting. And that is exactly why I did a video about how a lot of these people that talk all that woke shit is full of shit. They don't mean exactly what they have to say. As soon as the fire is put on them, they can't handle it. And that's my point. My thing about it is a lot of these things were set up. Okay, it was set up. That whole entire thing about them acting like an asshole last year with the whole entire protest, it was a setup. And they got paid for it. You had those people in the all black that was sitting up there destroying businesses, going to black neighborhoods, causing a ruckus. It was unbelievable, man.
Let me create the problem. Let me present a solution so you run to me as your savior. Black Lives Matter Incorporated, not the people, not the rank and file black community that's doing the work. Black Lives Matter Incorporated is a money laundering scheme, and they better get that bread right.
So here's the rub. We know this. The community knows this. The community has been going after Black Lives Matter for a while. They said we're small, but we're not supporting the organization. We just want equal justice under the law. So the community knows this. They've been pushing back against that. You can name after name.
Common phrases that liberals usually say.
The Taylor's family, Tamir's Rice family, they have been very vocal about this. So the question is, who's giving the money to these groups? Are they white liberal companies? Because Black America is already having the conversation. So who's trying to feel good?
The honorable.
Hold on. And furthermore, again, like I said, so-called black people that do all that liberal woke shit is trying to get the validation of so-called white people. Yeah, I said it. A lot of these people talk a good game, but they don't do nothing. A lot of these so-called black people that want to go on and talk about white people understand your privilege and this, that, and third, understand your racism. All of them is talk. They don't have no prior thing to do work. When it comes to the so-called black community, how common is it for you to see community organizers out there who have these men and women going outside, sitting up there handing out flyers to protect the community? I bet you don't see a lot of them. I'm not saying you don't see them, but you don't see a lot of them.
El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X, said, the white liberal is the most dangerous thing to the black American ever. Yeah. White liberals are behind and funding this anti-family, anti-nuclear family unit, anti-strong father in the household movement that has been morphed into something that has been very detrimental for our community.
And that's why I said to you, brothers, read that goddamn Black Lives Matter mission statement. Read it. That's why I get mad at these brothers that join these goddamn marches out here and sit up there trying to march in Black Lives Matter when they're obviously making you look like a fool.
If you want to tell me that, you know, hey, we're going to be helping you, but we have to control all of the money, we got to funnel it through Act Blue, I question you. The money will make a man change gods. And if we keep following that money, we're going to see all of the white liberals and a sprinkling of some of the black folks that bought $1 million homes off some of that bread. Yeah. Right.
What's good, Patrice?
We're going to see that. But nah, the liberals is running that, and that ain't for the hood no more. We got our own work to do. You want to support something? Support Black Guns Matter. We actually do what we say we're going to do with the money.
Yeah. We're going to keep following this because I like following the money. I like looking at the receipts and seeing who paid up. And Maj, I know you do too. So I'm so glad that you joined the program today. Hopefully you'll come back again. Thanks, brother.
And there you have it. The conversation about the whole entire thing of Black Lives Matter, something I've been railing against since I started this channel. Brothers just need to be on the right page. And sisters who think alike need to be on the right page. Too many times we get into these conversations about no solutions, just a whole entire talking front to make it seem as if we want to do something. So at the end of the day, if you want to support and you really feel like you need to do something, recognize what type of organization you're in. That's the only thing I have to say. Just be on the lookout about what's in your world. Otherwise than that, make sure you like and subscribe. Peace.